You're listening to the Bearded Ballesta podcast with your host, Adam Ballesteros, your one-stop shop for movies, sports, and entertainment.
You're listening to the Bearded Ballesta podcast, your host, Adam Ballesteros, as always. So this weekend, actually, is basically like the dream. It's like the ultimate weekend for all these sports fans. So we have a big MMA match in the UFC, which is why I brought my guest Leonard Bell on today. He's rolls at Darkside Jiu-Jitsu, and he's got a big background in martial arts, and he watches football as well. So I had to bring you on today.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, but basically this weekend, for all of you that might be living under a rock, the NFL is finally back. Thursday night we get the Packers and the Bears playing in Chicago, I believe. Which I'm only going to watch that because of fantasy football, pretty much. I got, some guys going on either team. Then you have Saturday, of course, at 2 p.m., I believe, our time, or Eastern time. We have UFC 242. The co-main event is going to be Paul Felder and Edson Barboza. And the much-anticipated main event is going to be Dustin Poirier and Khabib Nurmagomedov, which everyone's talking about. And it's, Khabib hasn't fought since the Conor McGregor fight. So it's very intriguing. Later that night, we have, later that day at 3 p.m., we do have Texas A&M playing Clemson, which is going to be a big matchup. And right now the spread, I believe, is 17.5 points in favor of Clemson, which is going to be, I feel like that's a little too big of a line. And I think A&M is going to give them a good game. And that night, we have Texas playing LSU in Austin, which is highly anticipated, especially for Longhorn fans like myself.
That's a war.
It's going to be great.
My little brother's already been talking about it.
I bet. But, yeah, man, so I know I also brought you on to talk about a movie that's up and coming that everyone's, polarized about, but I figured let's go ahead and start with sports. So, let's go UFC. So, what are you taking away from this matchup between Khabib and Dustin? What is your speculation about it?
So, I think it's going to be one of two things. It's going to be Poirier fighting through, making it to the third round.
Okay.
And starting to put impose his will.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's going to be Khabib being Khabib. He's going to get him down. He's going to maul him. And we're going to get more of the same.
Yeah.
But I think Dustin's one of the few guys that has the jiu-jitsu capability to fight him off and get back to his feet. And that's what's going to make it a different fight. Yeah,
and you actually do have a pretty good background with jiu-jitsu. You've been at Darkside for a while, and looking at some pictures from the old days, you have a picture of Gordon Ryan, I guess from an old seminar that you might have been in, and since I've known you, I feel like you've been really heavily involved with martial arts.
I mean, it's something I've been in since I was 5. I've always loved martial arts. We started with Taekwondo, switched over, got into full MMA, and the dark side gets a lot of the best guys. So I didn't even know who Gordon Ryan was when he came.
Really?
And they told me, "Oh, we got this guy coming." I was like, "Oh, who is he?" He's a big time jiu-jitsu player, and I was like, "I'm new to jiu-jitsu. I don't get it."
Yeah. No, I get that.
I skipped when Kenan Cornelius came. I didn't know better.
Wow.
Yeah, so now I'm learning.
Now it's changed. Yeah, now you have, Gordon Ryan's very well talked about. You have Dylan Dennis is another name that, a lot of it too is, because he's associated with Conor McGregor, and he's another guy that's always, starting chaos with Conor as well. But those are two of the biggest names in jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu has become a very prominent sport in America, partially because of the UFC, but also it's, no matter how old you are, it's a great sport to get involved with because, it's not terrible on your joints. You're not going to, break your leg necessarily like you would in Muay Thai kickboxing. And
you don't have to worry about getting punched in the face.
Exactly.
It's easier for people to get into.
Exactly. But, no, I agree with what you're saying this week, and we'll talk about it more with our picks later, but I'm an underdog guy, and I'm not, of course I'm a Conor fan. I'm not diehard thinking Conor's the best fighter in the world. I've never thought that. He's just very entertaining to watch. It's almost like watching World Wrestling with him. But yeah, so he didn't have a dog in the fight with Khabib, but it was, we all had to watch it because it's part of, the totem pole, how they're going to get to that lightweight championship. However, I do think that if two people could beat Khabib, Dustin is one of them. I think the other is Tony Ferguson.
That's who I think is going to be the first person to beat him.
Yeah, so I really do think that Khabib is going to win this weekend. However, I'm going with Dustin Poirier because I'm an underdog guy. I want to see chaos happen this weekend.
If you're a betting guy, you want to make some money. You don't want to.
That's the way to do it. I think right now it's -450 for Khabib So if you were to bet on Khabib, you'd have to put down $450 just to get $100. Whereas Dustin, I think, is positive 325. So you bet 100 to get 325 for Dustin. I mean, why not?
Yeah,
it's better. I mean, it's better odds. We'll see what happens though. I think Dustin is, he's very confident. You go back to the press conferences with Conor and Khabib, and you could tell that Conor was putting on an act. You can almost tell that he wasn't really 100% about what he was saying. That everything he was doing was for show.
I think he was going back to the boxing days, because with Floyd, he had to put on so much to sell the fight, and he tried to bring that over to the UFC, and
it's not the same thing. Yeah, and especially with Floyd, because they both bought into the ideology that, hey, we need to sell this fight in order to make it, in order for you to make your 300 mil, Floyd, in order for me to make at least 100 mil, we need to sell this thing like we're two villains going at it. That doesn't necessarily work as much as the UFC. You only have a couple of fighters that really buy into that kind of narrative. Colby Covington and what's his name?
The cringe.
Yeah.
Cejudo. I hate him with the passion.
Yeah. Oh man, I try to not even talk about that guy really. Triple C, I'm not a huge fan of him at all. I think he's very fortunate that he got to piggyback off of the fact that Demetrius Johnson decided to leave the UFC. I think had they had a rematch, I think Demetrius Johnson would have beaten him.
Yeah, I don't think he won the first fight.
I don't think he did either. And, a lot of people want to say, oh, don't bring it to the judges and this and that. But when you look at the fight, I think if it goes to a unanimous or a decision with the judges, I think that whoever is the champ, unless he's getting ragdolled, kind of like Tyron Woodley got ragdolled by Kamaru Usman, I think it almost favors the champion. Because unless you're decisively controlling the fight and winning, you can't really take the belt from somebody like that.
I'm a firm believer you have to beat the champ, and I think they just wanted some new blood.
Exactly, and that was sad for Tyron Woodley, not to go off in that tangent, but he got ragdolled the entire fight, and there was no argument as to Kamaru Usman winning. And but yeah, the Triple C thing, not a huge fan of him. I think that he obviously flaunts the whole cringeworthy thing, and he's working that to his advantage, I guess you'd say. But
he's taking the full WWE approach. He's playing up the villain. He said he's going to do whatever he has to do to make the money.
And my argument is that even really working for him though? Is it I guess people are talking about him, but at the same time he's almost like a fighter that's not really compelling to a lot of people like myself. I don't care to see him fight. I watched the TJ Dillashaw fight with him because I wanted to see if what's going to happen. And of course, Dillashaw completely disappointed. I'm not even a Dillashaw fan to begin with. I don't like TJ Dillashaw. I'm sure he's a cool dude, whatever. But I'm team Cody Garbrandt and the California kid and all that. So, but yeah, I'm not a Cejudo fan. But we'll see what happens. This is the most anticipating card that we have in the longest time. 242. The next one coming up, of course, is going to be down in Australia. We're going to have Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. Who do you got for that one?
See, I think that's one I'm having a hard time calling because I think if Adesanya does what he's been doing, once again, he's a hard guy to get a hold of.
Yep.
But if there's one guy that can control him and teach him what it means to wrestle, he's fighting the guy that's going to put him on his back and hold him down.
Exactly. Real quick, pull the mic a little more. There you go. Perfect.
Got it.
That's perfect. Yeah, so agree with you on that. So Adesanya is another one of those very, captivating fighters. It's fun watching somebody get in there, and it's like Mortal Kombat. It's insane how fluid he is and the way that he moves, and it's like he's on a cloud. It's almost like this, Goku kind of effect. But
everybody, he's Max Holloway with kicks.
Yeah,
he's gonna show off. He's gonna let you know he's in front of you. He's gonna keep talking to you.
Yeah,
but he's gonna make it entertaining.
I will say though, when it comes to bigger opponents, even Kelvin Gastelum, I feel like Adesanya doesn't really contain that sort of KO power that certain fighters in his division do have. It's very hard to picture him beating someone like Paulo Costa or beating somebody like a Yoel Romero or even a Robert Whittaker. I just feel like it's almost like they have a different size advantage. Like they're a true 200-pounder, whereas I feel like Adesanya doesn't really have to, he's kind of a leaner, smaller guy. I could also be completely wrong in that sense. I mean,
I felt that way for a long time about John Jones.
Yeah.
And he showed the exact opposite. He doesn't need size.
Yeah.
So I think Adesanya could be the next step towards a smaller version of John Jones.
Okay.
But Paulo Costa, I don't think Paulo Costa can beat him.
Yeah, you don't think so?
I think Yoel can beat him. But I don't think Paulo can.
Dude, I think Yoel got robbed.
Yeah.
I think 100% Yoel Romero got robbed in that fight with Paulo Costa.
It was because he wanted to put on a show for the fans. He kept pulling it to the center of the ring. If he would have pounded on him when he had him against the fence, they would have gave him the fight.
Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer that the judges just didn't want to reward him for playing to the fight, and which it's for the fans, so you're supposed to reward the guy that's
and he's always he's always kind of been in a lot of these fights where they're very there's a lot of drama involved. I don't remember if you remember in the past when he fought Tim Kennedy, and there was a lot of issues that happened where I think it was late in the second round where I guess Tim Kennedy's argument is that Romero was sitting on his stool for like way too long.
I remember that.
Something like that, and then it led to Tim losing the fight, and that's Tim's excuse where, going back to it, I haven't seen the fight in a while, but I don't think you can necessarily blame your loss on someone sitting on a stool for too long. However, that if it came down to a decision, that should deduct points from somebody. So I'm not, a professional in that standpoint. I can't really make a judgment. It's all speculation because I'm not a judge in the UFC. I don't work for the organization, so I'm just, an outsider watching and viewing it. But of course with the Costa fight, it just makes perfect sense that there's going to be more drama towards the end of it. And there's more, not really a clear-cut winner. You can't really walk away from that and say, oh yeah, like Paulo Costa deserved that fight. He really, because that first round he took it to him. Yeah. But then after that, it was kind of downhill. And Yoel Romero, I think, pretty much controlled most of that fight.
I think the first round where the mistake was made was when he let him point off and he looked in that direction, and Yoel dropped him.
Yep.
After that was his whole excuse for why he ever got injured.
Yep.
And as a fighter, like, you got punched in the face because somebody pointed in another direction and you looked, you should feel bad. Like, you should admit that. I wouldn't tell anybody that happened.
It's like in football when a quarterback's running down, or a running back's like downfield and he pump fakes. And it's like, why would you fall for that? It's 20 yards past the line of scrimmage. But yeah, I get what you mean. Actually, the co-main event of that same fight, not to, we're excited about this new upcoming fight that's coming Saturday, but I guess this last card that might be the fight card of the year. That co-main event was Nate Diaz and what's his name?
I was gonna say Wonder Boy, but it's
no, it's not Wonder Boy. How am I blanking? Yeah, Anthony Pettis.
Yeah,
Pettis did not show up to fight.
I think he tried to show up.
Yeah.
And he found out the hard way that Nate Diaz wasn't the easy fight he thought he was going to be. He was like, he's been off for a long time. He was never that great of a fighter. He kept talking like he just knew he was going to win. There was no challenge for him.
Yeah.
And that pressure.
It's just different.
It's the same thing he folded under with Max Holloway. Extreme pressure and guys that like to do fancy kicks, it tends to slow him down.
That does make perfect sense. I was highly impressed with Nate Diaz. I was one of those skeptical guys that thought, and I know he's a triathlete. He trains triathlons. He's never not working out. But I did think that his time off would affect him. And I did ultimately think that, Pettis had a great showing his last couple of fights. Although I will say now, and this does give me more, clarification on it, but it almost seems like that knockout on Wonderboy was a fluke, if you think about it. Because against Diaz, he didn't do anything. He was nullified from the get-go.
But it's because he was getting to play his own game. He got to throw the punches he wanted to. He got to change the angles. He was fighting somebody that fought like him. It's different when somebody's imposing their will. And I think that's the problem, like the Paul Felder fight. I think Paul's going to win this time because he fought somebody that he lost to when he was younger. He's scared to apply the pressure. He was trying to figure out how to adjust going into this fight. He knows what he needs to do. And the kind of pressure he puts on people, they end up just folding over time.
So you're taking Felder to beat Edson Barbosa?
That's if I'm a betting man, which I am.
Yeah. Dude, Barbosa's on a big slide, man. He hasn't really won anything in a long time.
It's because he's scared to get hit. He's fighting like he doesn't want to take any more punishment.
Yeah.
And you can't win doing that.
He's very flashy, but yeah, he's standing, he's standing in that close distance with somebody. It's not really working out in his favor anymore.
He's the exact opposite of, what's the guy's name that just got his nose destroyed?
Oh, Mike Perry.
Yeah. He's
Platinum
like the
Mike Perry.
Platinum Mike Perry.
I'm a fan of Mike Perry.
I love the way he fights.
I got to meet him in Vegas at 229, the Conor Khabib fight, I got to meet him at the bar at the Jack Daniels Lounge during the fight. And he's a wild card, man. He's the kind of guy that I'd like to say what's up, give him a handshake, but I don't want to go out with that guy. That guy might get you jumped, or you're gonna get into some kind of crazy altercation with him. But he's a cool dude. I agree with you. I think Paul Felder is going to beat Barbosa just for the sole fact that Barbosa hasn't been Barbosa for the last couple of fights. You know, whether it was Khabib, whether it was Kevin Lee, which I will say I am very disappointed with Kevin Lee. I was very high on Kevin Lee from even when he lost to Tony. I thought, you know, he's still young, he's growing, he's learning, and he's got good ground game, he's a good striker, but he fights Ally Quinta and, you know, just got destroyed by the real estate agent. And it's, you know.
See, Al showed me their first fight. That's why I never really had faith in him. I don't think he has heart. I think he has the athleticism.
Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin got everything you need to be a great fighter, except for the heart.
Yeah.
And that's like a big part of it. So when you fight somebody like Al, he's just going to out-heart you. He's going to break you down. You can keep hitting him all day. He's going to keep coming at you. And if you're not the kind of guy that's going to get amped up and want to knock him out that much more, he's going to end up on top of you, doing like he did to Kevin twice in a row.
Absolutely.
Manhandling him.
That's what happened. And then the fight that I really, man, I was so happy with the main event of the last card was Stipe and DC.
Oh, man, that was a great fight.
I'm a giant Stipe Miocic fan.
See, and I had Stipe losing.
Yeah.
I just thought
a lot of people did, man.
It was a bad matchup for him because he's got solid wrestling, but that level of wrestling, I was like, if he takes him to the ground, he can control him. Even if he can't get a lucky punch like last time, he should be able to get it done.
Yep.
He tried to stand up with Stipe, and he showed him what happens.
Man, that fourth round, Stipe just hitting him with those left hooks to the body, man, the kidney, that was, you know, or liver, that was rough watching that. But it worked out. And at some point you got to ask, you know, did Stipe, you know, would it really happen that way if DC really listened to his coaches a little more? Because DC's actually come out and said, you know, my corner was telling me the whole time, take him down, keep him on the ground, keep pushing him. And I've tried to stand with him and, you know, just sit there and bang with him, and it didn't work in his favor. So you almost think, you know, if there is a trilogy, does Stipe win this one again, or is this a DC, you know, maybe he takes it to the ground, and maybe that's his advantage point with Stipe, which I'm a Stipe fan, so I'm a little biased. I think Stipe beats him in the trilogy, but I don't know, you can't really count out DC. I mean, he's the greatest fighter, you know, not named John Jones, pretty much. But
and when it comes to DC, I mean, he has this one big glaring issue. He can't beat John Jones.
Can't beat him.
Before this, everybody thought that's the only man that could beat him. So now, if I was him, I would retire, hang it up.
I agree.
Go off into the sunset, because there's no point in losing against Stipe. The trilogy with John Jones isn't really a trilogy. He beat you twice, and they took one of his wins away. And the second one was a vicious knockout. So, I mean, I'm a DC fan, and I think he's getting older. It's time for him. He's a great ambassador for the sport. He's a great announcer.
He's done a lot for the sport, and I think that he is, ideally, he is one of those fighters that I think a lot of people should kind of replicate the way that he carries himself and the way that he trains and the way that he presents the sport. There's also the flip side where, like, I love the Jorge Masvidals, I love the Nate Diaz, I love the Conor McGregors, but it is a breath of fresh air when you see a DC or a Dustin Poirier, a guy that's all about helping the community and a guy that's all about, you know, putting on a good example for the youth that is watching the UFC.
It goes back to what we were talking about. It's all about people that are genuine. That's who we like. We don't like the guys that are putting on a show, trying to get fans. It's not entertaining. And
that's an issue I have with John Jones, to bring him up real quick. He is definitely trying to repaint his image, which I respect him for that. However, I also do believe that you should give people a second chance. But this is like chance number 4 for John. At this point, you got to think, I'm like, is this really genuine, or is he milking this just so he can, you know, stay in line for fighting? When are we going to see another hiccup from John? There's a good chance that he might pop again, or that he's going to have another altercation in public. I mean, it's very tough to, you know, believe that John's going to be here for the long haul.
I think we have at least a couple of years before he makes any mistakes.
You think so?
He can't do anything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he's an apex predator. You know, in the ring, he knows you can't be beat. Outside of the ring, he feels the same way, and it puts you in bad situations.
It's
same
great,
thing with Tyson. I'm surprised Wilder doesn't have this issue, because he's got the same mentality.
He does, but you know, I think one thing that's kind of, John has kids too, but Wilder, you know, he's got a big family, and he's the kind of guy where, although he comes off as very, you know, sometimes he comes off as like cocky or arrogant, and a lot of people just don't like his demeanor, I guess. I don't know what it is really, but I've heard that from some people in the media. But he's the kind of guy that I think is going to provide for his family and put food on the table at all costs. I think he knows right from wrong, and, you know, the way that is his demeanor that's helped selling fights. I mean, he's not a mirror image of Tyson, but he's a very undersized heavyweight. He's got that insane knockout power, and he's polarizing to watch. And I'm looking for a second fight with him and Tyson Fury. I think that would be another great fight to watch.
That's another fight where I feel like somebody got robbed because Tyson Fury definitely won.
Yeah.
I lost some money on that fight.
Yeah, no, I'm if you look at knockdowns, of course, that went in Deontay Wilder's favor. But if you're looking, boxing it's an art form, and it's more of, there's points and stuff involved when it comes to, controlling the ring and, jabbing and everything like that. So when you look at it that way, yeah, Tyson Fury won that fight. But same thing with the first Triple G Canelo fight. I think Triple G won that one as well.
Yep.
And he got robbed. And then it went down to a second fight, and Canelo won that fight, I think. I think Triple G wasn't as, hard pressed as he was in the first fight. But yeah, that's for another day. That's boxing. That's the corrupt sport of boxing that we have to unfortunately watch. I will say, though, 3 fighters that, I'm very excited about watching, and I'm excited that they're very young, and there's a lot of promise they show to the sport. Everyone knows Vasily Lomachenko. He's the Matrix. Everybody knows him. Another one, Gervonta Davis. I think he's another good one. He's going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about for years to come.
He just needs to stay away from Adrian Bronner, man.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean,
they're like best friends, and you see what happened to AB. He can't get his mind right and focus on boxing. Every fight, he says the same thing. I'm focused on boxing. This is all I care about. And then same result. He loses the decision, says he should have won. Hopefully
he can stay that, the straight course and keep focusing on fighting and doesn't get involved AB too much. And the third one is the Flash, Ryan Garcia. That kid is insane with a cover bag.
And I want to see what happens when he fights somebody with some power, because he's quick and he's got good power, but he fights fully based on speed. His hands are never above his waist.
Exactly.
And
we'll see what happens, man.
He said he wants Gervonta Davis. I'd watch that fight.
I would pay for that.
It'd be good for him.
Yeah. I don't know who'd win that fight. I'd probably take Gervonta,
because he's not as fast, but he's not slow enough for it to make a difference.
Yeah, he just seems like he'd be a tougher guy in the pocket in a way. Like, I think Ryan Garcia hasn't been tested as much as Gervonta has.
I agree.
From what I've seen, just looking at their boxing records and who they fought and whatnot. But yeah, man. So 242, you have Khabib beating Poirier, and you have Felder beating Barboza. I'm with you on those, but I'm going to take the Diamond Poirier. I think that...
How do you think he gets it done?
So this is going to be a 5-round fight.
I agree with you there. Nobody's quitting.
I think it's going to go to decision. I think it's, it's all speculation. It's very hard to root or to, pick somebody against Khabib unless it's Tony Ferguson. If it's Tony, then, I could say Tony's going to ankle pick him all day, and they're just going to... it might be a boring fight for a lot of people, but then again, it's for a lot of people that watch jiu-jitsu, a lot of people that kind of understand, whether you're a brown belt, black belt, or not even a white belt. If you've even rolled a couple times in your life, you understand how tough it is being on the ground. I think that's the fight that we all really need to see. And I could be wrong. I mean, Khabib has proven myself wrong. He can strike. He can get in there and throw hands if need be. Of course, Conor wasn't really expecting it, but,
Well, I think part of what Conor ran into is Khabib's not small. He's the same size as him. Conor's always been a bigger guy at 155.
Yeah.
Dustin, he's a bigger guy at 155. Same thing for El Kakui. He's a bigger guy.
So. I think if Conor, kind of like you're saying, I think if Conor is to come back, and because this is the first time in a long time where he's against the fans. The fans are not in his corner anymore. Yep. I want to see him come back. I want to see him fight, because win or lose, there's just something about a Conor McGregor main event that is just polar. Like, people that don't even watch fighting have watched UFC just to see Conor fight, and there's just something about the feeling in the room about Conor being in the octagon. Just
it's what boxing's been missing.
Exactly. But I don't know. I think that if he's going to get the respect back from the fans, he needs to go through the gauntlet. I don't think he needs a top 4 fight. I think that, if you look at his track record, he's beaten people like Dennis Silver, whatever, but he's also fought Max. He's fought Dustin. He's beaten both of them. However, that was a long time ago, 2013, 2014, prior to their come up to where they are now, because Max Holloway and Dustin are 2 completely different fighters that we're seeing nowadays.
Yep.
I think Conor needs to come back and say, hey, I'm going to fight these guys again just to prove once and for all that I am this person, or fight him just to show, they've improved or I've improved or whatever. But I think that he really needs to take a gauntlet approach. He needs to go and just fight through the gates of hell to get back to where he's at. Because if he gets a top 5, opponent, I'm excited to see it, but I don't have faith in him winning it. I just don't.
And that's what I knew was going to happen once he fought Khabib, because it's a fight he couldn't win.
Yeah, I don't think he ever beats Khabib. I just don't see. He could have Dylan Dennis, Gordon Ryan. He could have John Danaher in his corner. It doesn't matter. Khabib is, it's
years of grappling.
It's his life. Sambo wrestling, everything, man.
That's all he knows. And once he put his hands on him, I think that's when Conor really realized, oh man, this is going to be a tough fight.
And a lot of people were saying, oh, he tapped like a bitch and blah blah blah. But I'm like, honestly, I'd rather see Conor tap than get knocked out by Khabib. That's almost embarrassing if he were to get, like, whenever he got dropped, when Khabib faked the shot and hit him with the overhand.
We're still talking about it right now.
Man, dude, one shot, and that's all it took. And I was like, holy shit, is this it for Conor? Is he about to get knocked out by Khabib? Thankfully he didn't, but at the same time, I didn't think Conor would win that fight. There's a reason I didn't parlay bet that weekend in Vegas, because it's, there's something about betting against your team and betting against, your fighters that you follow. And I just couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it.
I respect it.
Yeah. So a lot of people, give me shit for being a Conor fan still, but, I don't know, man. I like the guy. I hope he comes back, and I can't really defend him with all of his shitty antics he does, out of the octagon, but when it comes to fighting, he's very entertaining to watch. That's
how I feel about Ben Askren.
Yeah.
I love to see him take that knee, but I hated to see it just as much because I have so much faith in him as a fighter.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted the fight to go on a little bit longer so we could see more.
That was, I don't know, man. That was one of those things where I wanted to see him tested. I really, because great fighter. Of course, he was undefeated at that point, and after the Lawler fight, I'm like, hold up. Like, of course,
some gaps in the armor.
Yeah, like, I'm like, wait a second. He's facing actual killers now. Let's see what happens to Ben Askren. Unfortunately, within 5 seconds he goes down, but he's not the same fighter as it was in one. I think it's just a different level of competition right now, at least for what he's facing. I could be wrong, but especially in that. And right now I used to be a big lightweight fan, which I still am, but I think the most intriguing division in the world right now is the UFC's welterweight division. You've got Kamaru Usman, you got Tyron Woodley, you got Darren Till's going up to middleweight now. Oh God, he's
making a big mistake.
Dude, his next fight, they're setting him up to be killed by Kelvin.
Yeah. He asked for that fight. That's the fight he wants.
Mad respect to Darren. Man. That's not a good fight for him.
Especially after getting knocked out viciously in your last two fights.
I know.
To fight another guy that's going to do the same thing.
And I'm a huge Till fan, man. I love Darren Till. Like, it just, his demeanor and the way that he fights. Like, he's just that old, like he's almost like it's like the Fighting Irish mascot. He's like that very stereotypical British dude with his arms up, and he's that old school, like, oh, it's fighting the bar. But man, the last two fights, he's he just gets caught, and it doesn't work against Tyron.
He's used to fighting against people he's bigger than, and he fights that way. So I think going up is the worst thing he could have done after two losses.
Yeah,
he's not going to be the bigger guy. He's not going to be able to use his distance and gauge it. He can try that against Kevin.
Yeah,
and he's going to get caught.
We'll see, though, because at the same time, I feel like a lot of these fighters that cut too much weight, it does somewhat affect them as far as, their chin getting knocked out. I feel like TJ going down, that was probably the worst thing for him.
That's why he got popped. That's why he got dropped. I think everything happened because he got so lean. His body showed that he'd been cheating for a while. And
maybe that's what's been going on with Darren. It's kind of hard to believe because he's been doing that for so many years. It's not like he just did two fights at lightweight and welterweight and lost, and he's going back up. Like, his whole career has pretty much been at welterweight. So,
but he's a young guy. He's getting older. It's harder for him to make that weight. That's what surprised me about Yoel Romero. I don't know how he ever makes weight.
No one really knows how old he is either. That's a funny thing.
He's 41. He might be 36. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, he looks great for his age, though. Dude's got the neck of a cobra. It's, every time I'm like, anybody that's in the room, like, hey, put your phone down. Look at this man take off his shirt. That's a specimen right there. That guy is crazy. But we'll see. I hope Darren Till can come out and beat Kelvin. I'm not too faithful in it, though. If I root for him and I bet on him, it's because I'm a fan. That's probably why I'll stay away from betting on him. I bet too much on the underdogs, and sometimes it doesn't work out in my favor. So
all you need is one. That's the beauty of underdogs.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. I'm excited for this card. I think it's going to... I'm excited that it's at 2 p.m. in the afternoon because it's in Abu Dhabi. I'm excited that I don't have to see this fight at 1 in the morning.
I honestly don't think that the best fight on the card is going to be the last fight. I think the Felder fight is going to be the best fight.
You think so?
I think they're gonna have a war. I think there's gonna be a lot of leg kicks, a lot of bleeding.
Yep.
And by the end of the fight, somebody's gonna get knocked out.
Yeah.
But
you think we'll see a finish with Paul Felder and Barboza?
I think Felder's going out of his way to finish him because he wants to get that shot.
That makes sense.
So,
yeah.
And it's a guy he feels like he should have beat the first time.
Right. I guess before we move on to football and whatnot, do you have any big fights coming up besides the couple that we've talked about that you're really anticipating? Whether it's Derek Lewis fighting at Madison Square Garden, or there's a big fight we're getting at the end of the year. I can't remember who it is, but they were talking about a trilogy between Stipe and DC. I don't know if that's going to happen.
They're trying to see what they're going to pencil in there. I think John Jones is going to come back for it.
Yeah.
Because he said he might fight one more time this year. He wants to. And that'd be the perfect card to put him on.
Yeah. Aren't we getting John and Johnny Walker?
They haven't made it official, but I think
they've made it official.
Yeah.
I know we're getting Corey Anderson,
but Johnny Walker shouldn't. He's climbing too fast. He's a good fighter.
Yeah.
But jumping from pretty good guys to the best in the world, the best in the history of the world, that's a big jump.
Yeah, it's I don't think he's ready for it either. But he's fun to watch.
That's the problem that Ngannou had.
Mm-hmm.
He made it so far that now he has to fight Stipe again. I don't think he can win that fight.
Although I will say, I think we'll get a better showing this time because he's, I think he really got embarrassed by Stipe.
Yeah.
I think I was embarrassed for him.
But I think that might make it worse because he's going to be really trying to get that win back. And his whole fight strategy is ludicrous power, swing with everything you got.
Yeah.
And that's only going to last for a round, and that's what happened in the first fight.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because whenever he tried to listen to outside advice from people, and as far as trying to keep the round going, that fight he had with Derek Lewis was probably the most boring fight I've ever seen in my entire life.
As much as I love Derek Lewis, he's like best friends with my coach. I can tell you that was a horrible fight.
That was very boring to watch.
He was trying to get something started. That was the worst part. Derek was trying to get the fight started.
You can't blame Derek. I mean, he's throwing he's throwing roundhouse kicks. He was trying to incite some violence, and Francis wasn't biting.
After taking a beating like that, it changes you.
Yeah. Unfortunately. I'm a big Derek Lewis fan too, though, man. It's hard not to. I mean, he posts the best things on Instagram and
old hot balls.
Yeah, balls is hot. He's just a cool guy, man. Got to meet him in Vegas. I'm actually trying to get Crew Bob on here too. Okay. I was gonna bring him on a couple episodes or a couple months back for Game of Thrones. He's a big Game of Thrones fan. Unfortunately, I had some car issues, so couldn't make it down there. But maybe sometime soon I'll go down to Main Street and see if he wants to, get on and talk a little bit of UFC and talk some Derek Lewis. But we'll find out.
I'm betting he'll be willing to.
Yeah. Another thing too. So do you follow like ADCC?
Yep.
So do you think Gordon's really going to win it again? Like, do you think it's just like no contest?
I really don't see anybody beating him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a different kind of guy to roll with. Even when he came to the school, just like the way he moves to be that big and that strong, he's that flexible. Mm-hmm. And his knowledge of leg locks, most people just don't like leg locks, so they don't practice them. Now people are starting to get more into it, and that's why he came to our school, because of how heavy we are in the leg locks. But everybody's trying to play catch up. This is what he knows.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to run into.
Do you guys have anybody from your school, specifically at Darkside, that is competes at that kind of level, or does any big tournaments? Or
we got a few that do big tournaments. We got a couple of super fight champs, a couple of champs in the gym.
Okay.
But at that level, I think we're gonna have somebody pretty soon.
Okay.
We got a brown belt that's getting his way there. He's a pretty vicious little guy, Randy Baker. He's Rice Krispie Randy.
There we go. That's a good nickname. There we go. Yeah, man. So I guess bet on Gordon Ryan to win ADCC again. But
if not him, it'll be Craig Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the other guy you saw me in the picture with.
Yep.
Now Craig Jones, that's the one person that's pushed to the limit. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you saw the fight, but he had Gordon Ryan in a fully extended armbar. I'm saying anybody else would have tapped. Mm-hmm. Gordon wasn't going to do it. He refused. He made it through it. They went to overtime. Gordon still got the win.
That's awesome.
And that's the only guy I can see beating him.
Yeah.
We'll see, if anybody can beat him, Craig Jones is a bad man, and he's 30 pounds lighter.
We'll see what happens. But yeah. So briefly before we get to the main thing that I really wanted to talk about with you, we'll brush over football real quick. The two main games this weekend, Saturday, that I wanted to ask your opinion if you even had anything on A&M and Clemson. Do you have a dog in that fight, or do you see A&M maybe beating Clemson at all? Or
if A&M makes it through the first quarter, I think they can beat Clemson. If they are down even a point going into the second quarter, I think they get dominated.
Yeah.
Because A&M hasn't shown me anything as far as coming from behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think against a team like Clemson, you don't come from behind and win. You got to make a statement in the first quarter.
I agree with that. Yeah, so they were very impressive against Texas State. Of course, it's Texas State. It's not Clemson. So it's kind of hard. I mean, everyone had tune-up games this past weekend except for Auburn and Oregon.
You saw how that went.
Yeah, that was actually very entertaining. That freshman quarterback, of course, that, Bo Nix pass at the end of the game, he just kind of threw up. And that was just shit coverage by the cornerback. But, it is what it is. I don't play defensive back in D1, so I can't really run my mouth on it. I would have done way worse. I would have been, 10 yards behind him. But, I think that, obviously A&M is like 17.5-point underdogs. I think that's way too much of a gap. I think if A&M wins, it's going to come down to like the last drive of the game. I do see them beating Clemson. I'm an underdog guy, and I think this is an underdog kind of weekend. I got A&M beating Clemson, which is very tough for me to say because I'm a diehard Longhorn fan. And I have Texas beating LSU later that night in Austin.
Now, I want Texas to beat LSU because my family's been going back and forth. Fantasy football, all we've been talking about is the games coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how we beat LSU.
So the issue is we have Sam Ehlinger, who, phenomenal quarterback. I love Sam. He's a hard guy to root against. He's very tough. He's almost like another Tebow in a way.
Yeah.
The big issue is, so receiver, I think we're very good. We have Colin Johnson. We have, what's his name? Can't remember right now. Jake Smith, though, is a freshman that came in. He was Gatorade Player of the Year last year in high school. He's going to be like another Jackson, Jordan Shipley kind of a player. Devin Duvernay's the other one I'm thinking of. He's like a smaller slot receiver.
Okay.
I think we're great at receiver. However, the biggest strength for LSU is their defensive backfield, all their safeties and corners. So it's really going to come down to, if they can stop Sam Ehlinger in the passing game because, running-wise, we have Keontae Ingram, who has shown flashes in this last game. He's very Deontay Foreman-esque. He's very quick and flashy. But he doesn't have any running backs behind him. Right now, Jordan Whittington, who is like our star recruit from Cuero High School, we actually moved him to running back. Big dude. Just got injured in this last game. He's been fighting I think it's a hernia injury. He's been fighting since high school, so he's out for the next couple of weeks. And right now, I think our backup running back is true freshman Rashawn Johnson, who is actually one of our quarterbacks. He's tall, number 2, very lanky kind of guy, but he's like our athlete. He plays quarterback, he plays running back, he can go to wide out, and so we've been lining him up at running back. So we'll have to see what happens.
I just feel like LSU, when it comes to their running game, Texas is going to struggle.
Yeah.
And if you can't stop them from running, you can't beat them.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a close game as long as Texas,
Now, Texas can put a lot of points up. If their receivers, like you said, if they get going, then the running game's no longer a factor.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Of course, I'm biased. I'm rooting for Texas. I have to. If I don't, I'm a piece of shit. But we'll see what happens.
As a Baylor Bear, I normally don't go for Texas, but in this game, I have to.
Mm-hmm. I feel you on that. Well, your brother went to Texas, so it just makes sense.
Yep.
And so now with that, we don't really need to go into the NFL at all. Actually, no, real quick. Big news this morning, Ezekiel Elliott with his giant contract extension. And why the hell did I not draft him at number 4 overall in 2 of my drafts? I got DeAndre, which isn't bad either. One of them's a PPR league, so it makes sense because of receptions, but I feel like I'm gonna feel not having Zeke on my team this year.
Zeke made it to the 2nd round in my league, and my little brother picked him up for nothing. I was so upset.
All my leagues, Zeke got picked up on auto draft at pick number 5 because I didn't pick him at number 4. And now I'm like, dude, I really hope this doesn't screw me over. But I got Austin Eckler in one league, which is paying off for me now because Melvin Gordon's showing up. But then in another league, I picked up Melvin Gordon in like the 6th round just in case, and who knows what's going to happen with him now. But no, Zeke just signed, 6 years, like $90 million, 50 guaranteed or something.
Yep.
That's insane, man. But still don't like the Cowboys. But
from what I can see, he's probably going to be there another 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
The way they structure the contract, I don't think they plan on keeping him for longer than 3 unless he really produces.
Yeah, which is going to be tough for him to do, man. He's their ball hawk. I mean, they're their cowbell. They feed him the ball like 30 times a game.
That's why they wanted so much money because they're trying to wear him out early in his career. So he said, okay, that's fine. Pay me now.
Yeah, which, it's smart to do. People like Aaron Foster, they didn't really get that opportunity, which, unfortunately. But, good on Zeke. Can't blame him. I'm happy to see him play this year, though, because as much as I don't like the Cowboys, it's always fun watching their games. I do enjoy watching Cowboy games. I'm a Seahawks fan, too, so, they're in the NFC as well, so it's going to be interesting to see. And actually, with the Seahawks, they just had a great weekend, thanks to the Houston Texans for, oh my gosh. I give it 1 year and Bill O'Brien is gone.
Yeah.
If they don't win the division this year, or win at least 2 playoff games, I think he needs to go.
But I think he did that because he knows what's around the corner. So he's trying to make everything he wants to do. He's doing now. He's making all the changes, and he's putting everything on this season.
It's sad because they could have gotten so much more for Jadeveon Clowney, but they kept waiting, and then finally, to the last moment, the Seahawks pretty much gave them like a refrigerator and got Jadeveon Clowney, which good for them.
They needed for their team.
Yeah. I mean, good for Jadeveon, and, I'm excited for the Seahawks. We'll see what happens. It sucks that Earl Thomas isn't there anymore. That was, like, my favorite player in the NFL, and now he plays for the Ravens, and I'm not cheering for the Ravens.
I'm a diehard Ravens fan. I'm super excited. Yeah.
Well, good for you for getting Earl Thomas. Hopefully he didn't blow his knee out anymore. That's one of my favorite players to watch since UT.
I think he went to the perfect team. We love defense. We needed somebody to replace Waddle after we shipped him off.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a perfect fit.
Yeah. I think the Ravens will be really good this year, too. You just picked up Mark Ingram.
Yeah.
That's going to be another workhorse for you guys. Then you have, Lamar Jackson, another polarizing guy. He's not that prototype pro quarterback that you see like in a, Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, but, I love watching the guy play. At his size, it's still it's crazy to me that he's not destroyed yet, that he didn't get blown up last year.
Every game, I feel like he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I was telling them earlier in our league, I told them it doesn't make any sense to me how somebody that small can run around so freely.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Griffin III would try to do the same thing, but didn't know how to take a hit and didn't know how to get down. That's the difference.
He's a smart guy. Lamar Jackson doesn't really come off as, the smartest person in the world, but, the guy can ball. He's good. So he's another guy I'm definitely going to be paying attention to. I actually picked him up in one of my leagues. So we'll see what happens. But, and with that, now we're moving on to right now what is the most talked about thing in the world, the movie Joker.
Oh, man.
And I know that, and I wanted you specifically to come on because on Instagram you have been a big advocate for this movie. I feel like you have, at first I was excited mainly because I love Joaquin Phoenix.
He's a great actor.
I was like, man, I don't know about Joker movie, and it's DC, and they don't have a good track record right now. But, you were posting it a lot, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to look at it more. Well, I'll read into it more. A lot of the stuff that I've seen from it, it's, I'm excited to see this. And like we were saying before the podcast, I think this is a movie that is coming out right when it needs to. With the state of our society and the state of how everything's going in this country, I think that this is, it's, with mental health, for example, with the way that, things are in the world with anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, I think this movie is going to, fit that bill for how things are going. This is going to be, at first I thought this was going to be just another origin story about the Joker, but it turns out that this isn't really apparently directly related to the DCEU, and this isn't really like a Joker. It's a Joker origin story, but they've picked and choose from the Killing Joke and other things in comic book history of what they wanted to do with this movie. So
I think this is what we need more of for DC to have good movies,
mm-hmm.
because they're so busy trying to keep up with Marvel, they don't realize you can make a good movie that has nothing to do with any other movies.
And I agree with that.
There's comic book one-shots.
Yeah.
So why not keep it going?
Mm-hmm. But it's, I think this movie, did you ever watch any Martin Scorsese movies like Taxi Driver or The King of Comedy?
I saw The King of Comedy. Taxi Driver's on my list. Now it's on Netflix.
You have to watch that before this movie. There are a lot of similarities between the two, and that's another movie that, you kind of have to watch Finding Nemo after, because you're like, oh, that was creepy. I think this is going to be another one of those movies. This isn't a movie that you can watch just once. Kind of like The Dark Knight. I went and saw that movie, I think, 4 times in theaters. It's a movie that you kind of have to watch over and over to really understand all the symbolism and all the character development that's in this movie. This isn't a very straightforward kind of a thing. We have critics, blowing up this movie, saying that this is, a word that's being thrown around a lot on Rotten Tomatoes is masterpiece.
There's nobody better at playing crazy than who they got.
Mm-hmm.
They know that we've had so many Jokers that couldn't live up to the huge shoes left behind by Heath Ledger.
Mm-hmm.
So they got the one guy that's not scared. He's going to be himself. He's going to approach the role how he would any other role.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like he's really just dove straight into it.
From what have you looked at all into the background of the story? What's going to happen with Arthur Fleck? Like, are you familiar at all with how kind of like what's going on behind the scenes as far as, basically Arthur Fleck, he's a social outcast, living, and it's this takes place in 1981, Gotham City. It's modeled after like New York City around that time.
Okay.
This is supposed to take place, but obviously when Bruce Wayne is a young kid, and there's a lot of political driven things behind this movie. So we're apparently going to see Gotham in its glory days, and we're going to see how society kind of created the Joker, about how this man who was, cast out, and he was, picked on and not necessarily abused, but he just wasn't treated fairly, was pushed into this role as Joker. And a lot of people are, not a lot of people, but some things I've read online from this, a lot of people are very worried that they're making this Joker somebody that people can relate to, someone that people can, side with in a way. And it freaks people out because they're like, what if we're, fantasizing and, glamorizing the Joker in this movie, which unfortunately he is a glamorous kind of villain to a lot of people. There are a lot of people out there who sadly are into Stockholm Syndrome with Harley Quinn and the Joker. Like, a lot of people out there are like into that kind of thing. Like,
No question about it.
It's weird, but there's people out there.
I mean, if we can make Saws,
yeah,
Human Centipede movies,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why we can't have a Joker movie. I agree that it's gonna put people in a certain light, but I think people are gonna realize why there's individuals that think the way they do.
Yeah,
Not all of them are just crazy psychopaths. Some of them have just been pushed down a path they feel like they don't have a way out of.
and I think with like I'm not at all siding with the school shootings and things like that, but I think in a way this movie could somehow put it into a different light for people that don't think of it that way. Because I think one thing we run into a lot with a lot of the the mass shootings and things that happen today, a lot of people just want to immediately paint the person as they're just an evil person. But I think we really need to dig deep and see, how did they get to that point? What drove them to this point? And I think this movie is going to be kind of like another character, study in a way to show, hey, although this is a fictitious story and this is, a man that is the Joker, this is kind of, like a baseline for how this sort of thing can happen. And I think they're using Gotham and they're using the Joker as a good pinpoint to draw people. Because this very easily could have been a movie titled Arthur, about a man named Arthur Fleck who just goes crazy and, dresses up like a clown.
Yep.
But
It wouldn't have had the same sticking point as putting that Joker on it.
It wouldn't have, but they've, and I think it might have been you, or I can't remember who, maybe it was Jeremy Johns, but they pointed out that the painting that the Joker uses now on his face is the same of the mask that Heath Ledger is carrying at the beginning of The Dark Knight in the bank heist. He's carrying a mask, and it's the same kind of face paint, but it's also, he has the same kind of face paint as John Wayne Gacy, Bobo the Clown back in the day, the infamous serial killer. There's a lot of, because a lot of, I don't know this much about clowns, but I went down a rabbit hole the other day, and apparently a lot of clowns back in the day did not like when other clowns would paint very vivid red lines for their mouth. Like, if they didn't blend it, if it was just a complete straight line, apparently it freaked out children. And so this Joker has that same kind of painting to give a very, edgy feel to it. Like, it just makes you feel uneasy.
Those are little details that make movies that much better.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so as far as this movie goes, is there, anything in particular that you're, I guess, mostly excited about? Or I know you were just talking about how you don't really watch trailers and you try to stay away from all that extra stuff. Is there, do you know a lot about the movie as far as what's going to happen? Or are you trying to stay on the outside of the Joker?
I'm trying to stay as far away as I can while also watching it really closely.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I don't want to find out anything about the movie, but I can't help but look at the new trailers when they come out.
There's only two, though, which has worked out in our favor. They had the, teaser trailer and then this final trailer, which I'm happy with, because I feel like every other movie that's come out thus far, they put out like 12 new trailers, and it's almost, at least you half the movie. There are a lot of stuff that in the Endgame trailer that we saw that I wish we hadn't seen, but at the same time, we really didn't see a whole lot in the trailer. So I'm hoping that this movie, we didn't see a whole lot. or we haven't seen enough to kind of see what's going to happen.
I think this is going to go back to the throwback days of DC,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to that dark place. They're going to give us everything we want out of the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get some nods towards the audience, but they're going to really develop his character.
Yeah.
And as a character that's never fully been developed by the comics, it makes sense that a movie would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't think that there's any problem with it.
Yeah. And like you say, I think that I'm a huge Marvel Cinematic Universe fan. I think everybody is now. But it's going to be a breath of fresh air to see a standalone movie that is not, the super family-oriented Marvel kind of movie. This is going to be, there's a reason they call it the DC Black Label. And I actually read somewhere that this is something they're going to try and start doing, is you're going to have like your stereotypical DC family kind of movies, but then you're going to have a Black Label where it's going to be a movie like this where it's rated R and it's something you don't bring your kids to. And they're going to maybe do, whether it's with Deathstroke or another villain, they're going to have another kind of origin story sort of movie. A lot of potential that can happen with this movie. And I think that, this is going to change comic book history for these movies, as it should.
I think it's going to be one of those movies that's so good, the comics are going to change because of the movie.
Yeah.
Kind of like Harley Quinn didn't exist until she was on the animated series, and now she's a part of the Joker. And when we think of the Joker, we think of Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm. I think there might be some people that are going to be very skeptical about this movie because it's not going to immediately follow, the way that the Joker's been portrayed in the past. But then again, my argument is there's been like 12 different Jokers or whatever. Like there's a bunch of different Jokers in the realm of DC's universe. Like they're not all the same person. So this might be kind of like you say, a story that we haven't seen yet that is going to be super intriguing.
In a world of multiverses, I don't know why so many fans take every single thing so literally. Like nothing can be different.
Yeah.
But in the comics, everything's different.
Yeah, like I was telling you earlier, I didn't really grow up reading all the comics. I mainly watched all the Batman animated series, like The Mask of the Phantasm, things like that. So with Marvel, I know a lot about Marvel's history because I do my own research, because I don't want to go into things and conversations like not knowing anything. I think it's worked out in my advantage, though, because when I go to these movies, a lot of the time I don't know what's going to happen. So it's been very, great for me, whereas I feel like a lot of other people that read every single comic out there, it's not a shock to you.
And then they expect a certain path, and when it doesn't happen, they're like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm. Like Game of Thrones, for example. I know you don't watch Game of Thrones yet. You will soon. But I didn't start reading the books. I started with the shows. And I feel like I really appreciated the shows because I didn't know what was going to happen. Now that I know what's going to happen, I look back at the people that read the books and I'm like, I can see you liking the show, but you don't appreciate. There's no way you can appreciate it the same way because when certain events unfold in the show, you already knew it was going to happen. Like you don't have the same reaction that someone like myself would, someone that doesn't understand it. So like Endgame, a lot of people were, ecstatic at the last hour of the movie. I feel like for a lot of the people like myself that didn't know what was going to happen, actually I can't say that because I feel like even comic book readers didn't really know what was going to happen because this is kind of like a new groundbreaking thing in cinema with Marvel Comics. But I think with Joker, the biggest appeal to me is that we don't know what's going to happen. We haven't met Arthur Fleck. We're about to meet him, and I think he's going to take us on this crazy, sadistic sort of ride where, we're going to see how he becomes the Joker, almost like this domestic terrorist kind of person. We're going to see I think it's going to be kind of like a extent to like where Christopher Nolan's Batman movies were, where it's more realistic, like it could actually happen in real time. But yeah, so we'll leave it at that for today's episode. Leonard, where can people find you online?
Best way is on Instagram, Lenny Von Strangle. You can put that on anything. Just think Jorgen Von Strangle, like Fairly Odd Parents, but it's Lenny.
And I'm going to have Leonard come back on very soon. We're going to talk about the Joker much more and more mixed martial arts. But thanks for listening to Bearded Bias, the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Bearded Ballista podcast. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes and Podbean.